The Rubik's Cube has been around for almost half a century. Yeah, that's a pretty long time. Here's what it looked like when it was first released, and here's what it looks like now. How did we get here? Well, it all started in 1974 when Erno Rubik glued together a couple blocks made out of wood, and bang, the first version of the Rubik's Cube was created, which was called Magic Cube at the time. One problem though, how do you solve it? Well, that's the question Erno asked himself, but after only a month, he did the unthinkable and broke the puzzle out of pure anger. But he persisted with it, and after a few months, he finally solved it. A couple years later, the puzzle was renamed Rubik's Cube and was going to be released worldwide. It's the early 80s.
Good evening.
And the Rubik's Cube has taken the market by storm. Millions of cubes were sold, thousands were smashed, and a few were solved. The Rubik's Cube craze had hit. In 1982, the first cubing competition was held in Budapest, Hungary. 20 people competed and the American Mintai won the comp with a 22.95 second solve. However, by the end of that year, the puzzle's popularity started going downhill. In 1984, cube sales plummeted and went from over 60 million a year from 1980 to 1983 to under 4 million in 1984. People lost interest in the cube, generating this immense crash in sales, as those that were intrigued already possessed one. For the next decade, the Rubik's Cube became that frustrating artifact of the early 1980s, which has been retired to the attic, the garbage heap. It's now the mid-90s and the internet just became big, like really big. So much so that people started posting things about everything, including Rubik's Cubes. More specifically, people started publishing their methods of solving the puzzle. One stood out from the rest, Jessica Fridrich's method. In 1996, Jessica posted her speedcubing page and explained her process of solving the challenge. This method was later called CFOB and is now the most popular method in speedcubing. This sparked a revival in cubing and led to the World Rubik's Games Championship in 2003. Almost 100 people competed, new events were added, and the 3x3 single and average records were both broken. The first cubing competition since 1982 was a success, and this left people desiring more competition, so the World Cube Association was founded a year later, and from 2004 to 2007, more than 100 competitions were held, and the 3x3 single and average went down to 9.55 and 11.76 seconds respectively. Cubing was rapidly growing in size and numbers, but there was one problem: the cubes sucked. At that point, the only cubes available in the market were old Rubik's brands, and despite people's best efforts at lubing and modding a Rubik's brand, it still turned like an 18-wheel lorry. However, several individuals saw this lack of cube development as a sign to start their own cubing brands. Thus, multiple cubing companies were founded, most notably Dayan. Dayan was created in the early 2000s and released several iconic cubes like the Dayan Guhong and the Dayan Xianqi. These two releases were revolutionary at the time, as they brought in new mechanisms that are still used to this day. Dayan was the best cubing manufacturer in the early 2010s. But who was the best cuber? Well, it was none other than Feliks Zemdegs, the greatest speedcuber of all time. Feliks started competing in 2009 when he was only 13 years old, and despite his young age, he broke the 3x3 Oceanic Continental record in his first competition. A year later, he broke the 3x3 world record single and average, and by the end of 2012, Feliks got the single down to 5.66 seconds and the average down to 7.53 seconds. Feliks wasn't just great at 3x3, he actually dominated every end-by-end event, and combined with being a determined person, he is the perfect role model for aspiring cubers. This comment about Feliks sums it up best. It's now the late 2010s and the cubing landscape has completely changed. To begin with, Dayan has fallen off and has been replaced by Moyu and Dayan as the best cubing manufacturers. These two inventive companies have been producing puzzles on a yearly basis and have been adding new features like magnets to improve their cubes' performances and also up their prices. On the other hand, cubing retailers like Speedcube Shop and The Cubicle significantly grew in popularity and are now the biggest cube sellers out there. On the competitor's side, Feliks remains as one of the best, however he is now joined by Max Park at the top. Their rivalry on stage, but more importantly, their friendship off stage, is extremely intriguing and leads to a Netflix documentary called The Speedcubers. Speaking about speed, the 3x3 world record single was broken multiple times by various established cubers prior to a random dude who completely destroyed it in 2018. Unknown before this event, Yu Shendu still is the world record holder 4 years after he set his mind-blowing 3.47 second single. For the 3x3 average, however, it's Max Park who currently holds it with a 5.08 average. Anyway, that about does it for the entire history of the Rubik's Cube, I guess.